All right, so we'll be in a minute. What's up?
What up? We
What
on?
up? First thing, before you even mention it, yes, that is Biggie. It's my new painting that I got.
Oh, I already saw it last time. We had Caroline on. I
Oh,
saw it.
I forgot you clicked into the one with Caroline for how much of it did you see? How much of it did you watch?
Let me get off my Wi-Fi. See if I'm back. All right, am I back? Did I ever
Yeah, you're
leave?
good.
My Wi-Fi's
Yeah, you're good.
terrible. I only saw a little bit. I only like clicked in for a second. And I saw it and then it
Yeah,
came out. But I saw Biggie.
yeah, it was good. Yeah, thanks for coming on. How's the quarantine life going? Other than, I mean, every time I turn around, you're on something. You're keeping
I
busy.
know. The funny thing is, so Megan and I have that show, quote
Yeah,
unquote, that we do every weekend. And now that we have like started having guests on, because we just ask like whatever comes up. If they
yeah,
say
yeah.
like anything like SPN hooks it up now and like other news outlets, so that's kind of funny. So that's probably why you see it. Like when D's like, why don't women own teams? That kind of thing. Are
Hold
we
on, you're breaking
delayed?
up. You're kind of, you're kind of, hold on, you're kind of choppy. Yeah, you're a little choppy.
This is all I
That's
got.
better.
Okay.
No, that's better. That's better. Wait, what were you saying? So, oh, when people say stuff, then other people want to ask you about it, right? So it's like it
No,
just
no, no, like
snowballs
other
into,
people, yeah, like other people pick it up.
right.
Like ESPN picked it up last week. Or last week, like 3 days ago, we had Jimmy on, Jimmy Butler,
Hmm.
and we asked him a question about that Kawhi shot, and so ESPN picked it up, stuff like
Right.
that. So that's probably why you see me.
Yeah. No, I mean it's like right now it's like all you can really do, right? It's like
Yeah.
there's no there's no like real content going on. So this is like what everybody's been doing. It's actually kind of cool because I feel like it's like a lot of people are talking to people that you wouldn't normally have those conversations with, you know? It's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for coming on. Real quick, just to give you a rundown of why we wanted to have you on and kind of what impact is, because we haven't really talked about it much. Um, so impact training was started by Chris Prescott, who and Steve Samuels, who I grew up playing with here in Connecticut. Chris actually ended up being my teammate at St. Joe's. Um, but yeah, I mean, we met in probably like fourth grade. We started playing. Like he's a local kid, one of my good
Yeah.
friends, and basically the idea behind it is to kind of become not just training young athletes and kind of taking it a step further and being an impact on every aspect of their lives, like whether it's you know athletics, academics, being a better son, daughter, brother, sister, all that stuff. Because me, him, and a lot of us were lucky enough to have people that were an impact like that on our lives, and
Yeah.
just trying to be that person to as many people as possible, and kind of give back to the game and give back to um, what kind of shaped who we became and whatnot. So just try to talk to as many people that we feel like are like-minded and have stories about how they got to where they are and what impacted you, who impacted you, and things like that. And I'm not going to read you your list of accolades, but obviously the game's been pretty good to you. Um,
It's been all right.
yeah, but I mean, yeah, I mean, you had to overcome a lot too, though. I mean, um, I guess we can get into it. If you just want to share kind of, how you got it, kind of how you came up and, um, when you realized or what kind of the decisions that went into, because at one point you had to choose between basketball, soccer. I mean, you kind of had that whole thing going on too. And, obviously
Yeah.
things worked out, but, yeah, if you could just give people kind of the rundown of, your thought process growing up and kind of what led you to kind of where you're at now.
Yeah. So I think like a quick summary is just I was always good at sports. It kind of found me. I was tomboy, like always involved in everything, not just sports, like climbing a tree, with my friends, riding bikes, that kind of thing. So being
Mhm.
active and being involved in stuff, that always found me. And I think as I went, I never, again, this is like the quick sum up, I never really relied on my strength or my height or my quickness or my speed. Like I had, well, not the height, but I had some of those other things. So I had them. It wasn't like so obviously I was like elite in them, but I didn't rely on them. So it kind of
Mhm.
like my sports career, because I relied on other things. And I think that's why I've been able to play this long as well. Because I couldn't overpower you physically, all these other aspects of me as an athlete developed, even at an early age. Because I wasn't dominating anybody physically. So all the mental parts had to grow up fast. And that's kind of what I leaned on. But like I said, involved in tons of sports. Is this cutting out? Are we good? I can't tell. I'm not on Wi-Fi anymore, so it can't be my fault.
No, yeah,
Okay,
no,
we're
you're
good. All
good.
right.
You can hear me,
So
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
you just I keep getting the circle thing
Uh,
for you, and you're a little blurry. We'll make it work. Um, so I grew up in Syosset, which is on Long Island. Luckily, they had tons of sports. I actually had to play on a boys soccer team early on because they didn't have girls available. So that was interesting
oh
thinking
wow.
back on that. And then from there, like you said, I did have to choose at one point. That wasn't until like mid high school. I was kind of good in both sports, and I mean, the short of it is that I actually transferred high schools to Christ. I went from Syosset to Christ the King, and they actually didn't have a soccer team. But I knew that going in. Like choosing that school, I knew I was choosing basketball. So that's when things started to get serious for me. That's when you start to get recruited by colleges. Um, but it's interesting because like I could sit here and tell you some funny stories about, even with like your dad, even with Connecticut. Um, there was always like not like doubt on whether I could play at the level, but there was always like, I'm sure you remember, and she was in my position. And I only bring this up to say, it's like now it seems like natural that I chose UConn, and like of course this all makes sense. But there was actually moments where it was like, is this where I should go? Is this the place? Do they even want
Right.
me? And I actually think some of those question marks kind of like I held on to them without knowing. And I've
Mhm.
always had this other part of me where, like I said, I never really relied on my like physical abilities. And I also had this like, I need to prove myself kind of a vibe.
Mhm.
And that like came through times a billion when I got hurt my freshman year. So when I
Yeah.
got hurt my freshman year, then it was like so many people being like, "Oh, UConn's great, but they don't have a point guard. What's going on with Sue? She's injured, yada yada." So right
Mhm.
away, I kind of like developed this I need to prove myself mentality, with the help of a lot of people. And that's
Yeah.
really like, to be honest, that moment I talk about it a lot, that injury totally like changed the trajectory of my career, of my
Mhm.
life, and really like set me on this path. And I think the rest is history, so to speak.
Yeah. So, so kind of what I'm hearing is like, do you think those two things went hand in hand? Like the fact that, um, you felt like you had the knowledge and the talent, um, to be better than your peers, but you didn't necessarily have the, athletic prowess, but you always felt like you had the chip on your shoulder to be like, I know I can be X, so, but I need to work extra harder type thing because
Yeah.
you always felt like you had something to prove.
Yeah. So it kind of came in like waves, or like the order of it was kind of mishmash at points. Like early on, it was like I knew I was talented because like starting in like sixth, seventh grade, I was getting, and believe me, I knew, like now I know this means nothing, but I started getting college letters from like
Mm.
major universities, and they're like just basic questionnaires, but it still means like you're on the radar, right?
Right,
So right
right.
away I knew like, okay, I'm on this radar. I was always one of the better players on my AAU team, if not the
Mm.
best. But I think there was a period of time there. And again, like obviously I had the athletic ability, but I didn't depend on it. That's kind of
Right,
the difference there.
right.
Um, so yeah, but early on in my like AAU career, I was lucky to have Jill Cook was my AAU coach, and she basically said something to me that like to this day hit home, where it was something like, you don't want to be a player like that had great potential. You want to be a great player. And so
Right.
that, I mean, she would write our AAU team like report cards at the end of every AAU season, and that was like in my little report card, you know.
Yeah.
She challenged me, which was great. I needed it. I guess that the moral of the story is like I needed a kick in my pants every now and then. And
Mm.
like she provided it for me, Coach Auriemma provided it for me, and then I've actually had coaches along the way. Every time I start to slip a little, someone's there to kick me in the ass. So it's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. And, you know, I feel like everybody that is, you know, you get to a point where even someone as talented and with all the high school accolades, all that stuff, you still need somebody to check you, right? Like you still need
Yeah,
that, you know,
100%.
reminder or the challenge. And that kind of leads me to my next question about your college experience, which, I mean, I know obviously me and you have developed, you know, a close relationship over the years, but I'm always curious to hear like candid responses about, you know, what it was like not only to play for my dad and stuff like that, because we can get into that, but I'm always interested about like the pressures. I asked Caroline the same question, the pressures of what you know it entails, like being at UConn and,
Mhm.
um, you know, just the expectations of what you guys are constantly dealing with and how you deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think of the kids that go to UConn now, and I think the pressure is like way
Right, that's
bigger,
true.
way more. I'm not
That's
envious
your
of that.
fault.
Yeah. I mean, because even I always joke, like, you walk in, I mean, I know you know this, but
Yeah.
you walk into the practice facility, and it's like, for those that don't know, it's like the championship banners, all 11 of them up there. And then you've got on another wall, like all the Americans.
Yeah.
But if you've won player of the year, you're kind of like above, and
Yeah.
your names are listed. And then underneath, there's like a little banner of the year that you were an All-American. And I
Mm,
always go in there and I look up, I see my name, and it's obviously it's the greats. It's
mm.
Diana. I mean, the list, Rebecca, you name it, all the great
Right.
ones. And it's like they were all like Dee, Maya, Stewie, even like, because obviously those are like the elite. And even like Bria Hartley, such like they're Kalina Mosquito Lewis, like they have multiple banners underneath because they were.
Right.
I was only an All-American, like a Kodak All or whatever it's called now, like my senior year.
Yeah.
So I
And
just
you won
have like the
player of
one
the year too,
year.
right?
Yeah, but so amongst all the player of the years, I look like a bum. I'm
Yeah,
like,
right.
dang, they all.
Yeah, which is
I'm the
crazy
bum
to
up
think
there.
about. Like, because like you
No,
were
I know.
national player of the year, right?
Yeah, yeah. But my point is, I feel like that looking up there. I can only imagine a freshman walking in that building being like, holy, like, what am I walking into?
Yeah.
Plus, UConn's in a place now where it was like that when I was there. It was win or bust, but there's like a different weight to it now. But anyway,
Yeah.
when I first got there, or when I was in school, you had that pressure because we had won before, but we were lucky in that we'd only won once. We won in 1995. And then my class got there in 98. We ended up winning in 2000. So it was only the second title.
Yeah.
So in some way, it's like we had the pressure because everyone wanted to recreate 95 or get back to that status. But we were also kind of like writing our own story.
Yeah.
So it was actually, looking back compared to now, it is a little different.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. I guess someone like Caroline would probably be an example of someone that when they like her class, like Maya,
Mhm.
Tina, Caroline, and them, because then by the time they got there, now it was like you guys had like 4 or 5, whatever it was,
Yeah.
and then they're walking in the gym and seeing some of those banners and stuff going up, and then it's like,
Man,
but she,
Stewie walked in the building and said, I'm going to win 4 in a row. It's like, none of us would have ever said that. We were like, I mean, you might be
right,
like, yeah, we want to get to the final 4, you know? Stewie was just like, I'm going to win 4. And I
yeah,
asked her once, I was like, what made you say that? Was that like your real goal? And she was just like, well, what else would I say? Because you're not, obviously, if somebody asks you, you're
yeah,
not
I'm
going
not
to
gonna say we're
go,
gonna
oh, I
lose,
hope I win 2 out of 4. Yeah. So
right,
she was like, I
right,
really didn't have another option. But the point is, like, she got asked that question. We didn't get asked, how many national championships are you going to win in your career? It
right,
wasn't, it never was framed that way. So it is like an interesting dynamic, but you could also make the argument that your dad was like way harder in his younger
You
years.
guys always say
I would
this.
make that argument.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you can dive into that because that's, I mean, when we all spend time together, that comes up a lot. But I don't think a lot of people in the general public know like what you're referring to, and I think people would like to hear because, like I said, you are very close to my dad and our whole family, and everybody's very close. But
Yeah.
you and Diana obviously have a different relationship with him and see things a little differently. So if you could dive into like what you mean by he was harder back then, or whatever
Um,
whatever type of stuff you bust him on, I think people
yeah.
will like that.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I remember when like Jen Rosati, Rebecca Lobo, Kara Walters, they would come back. So that's when I was in school. They came back to practice. Not often. We had the pleasure, and obviously I'm saying this sarcastically, of having Rita and Nikisha come back all the time. I mean, talk about nightmares. Literally, to this day, I think about those practices like they would just kill us. But when those guys, those older guys, if you will, would come back, they would be like, "Oh, coach is so easy on you guys." So I do think it's like a generational thing. You just always
Mm,
think you had it the hardest. But I go back to practice now, and it's not that he's not. I just think it's like with age, you kind of. I see this as in myself as a player. You know what's a waste of time, and you know what's not, and you kind of just save your energy for the moments when you need to like bam, you know. And like I
mm.
said, I notice it as a player too. Like I could go for that steal, but I know it's like a 20% chance I'm going to get it. So I think I need to save my energy for
You're
later.
like,
And I'm
yeah,
sure
you're
your
like, it's
dad.
the first quarter though. It's like,
Yeah.
I need to get that steal in like 45 minutes.
Yeah,
But
exactly. But if
I
I
would
was
agree
like
with you.
20, I would have been like, pew, pew, you
Right,
know?
right. And I think I noticed the same thing, and like the couple practices that I've witnessed, in the last couple years. And I told him this. I said he feels a little more like Zen now. Like
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
not
He's
as like rah
observing.
rah like how he was with you guys. But
Totally.
it's still there. Like you said, he kind of picks his spots, like you kind of have to do. But
Yeah.
if you could just
No, he was
maybe
tough,
tell,
Mike. He was
yeah,
tough.
I was gonna
I
say if you
mean,
could
the
tell a
amount of
couple
times we went
stories
back to our
about
dorm,
playing for him.
yeah, the amount of times we went back to our dorm room and just like cursed this man. But, I say it with love because he was definitely trying to make us better. He was just putting us in like impossible scenarios, knowing that if we figured it out, we'd be fine. And for me, like I said earlier, I'm totally like a cerebral player, and my mental toughness is a huge part of my edge. So in some ways, like player coach wise, it's like a match made in heaven because he just wants to challenge the crap out of you. And for
Mm,
me, I found out, trial by basically throw me to the fire. But I realized like the more somebody does that to me, the more I respond, the more it brings it out of me. And I need
mm,
that.
mm,
So that's what my 4 years were like, is just him, no matter what I did, it just wasn't enough. Not until like my senior year, but that's actually my senior year. There's that one infamous practice for me where I didn't contest a Tom Tedesco jump shot. And
shout out Tom.
coach is like huge on contesting. If you don't contest, even
Yeah,
if you're like 30 feet away, just like, to put your hand up.
yeah.
And I didn't. And he questioned me on it. Or he questioned Tom, did she contest that shot? And Tom was like, no. And I was just like, this mother, are you kidding me? Just do it. And I was like, he's just going to say what you want him to say.
Yeah.
Your dad laid into me so hard, so hard. It's the only time I cried in my career.
Is that when
To his face, to his
is that
face.
when he kicked? Did you get kicked out?
I didn't get kicked out, but I literally just stood there and was like trying to hold it in. Like, oh no, boom, just crying. But as the story goes, he did apologize the next day, like in front of the team.
Right.
I felt good about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just always every day in practice. If you survived, you felt like you conquered the mountain.
Yeah. I mean, I had the opportunity to play for him too, and it was
I can only
like
imagine
yeah. I
for
mean,
you.
similar stuff to you though, but like you learn quickly that like when and Caroline said the same thing. Like when he stops doing that to you, that's when you're
Yeah,
like worried because you're like, oh God,
that means you're
he
yeah,
doesn't even expect anything of me, right? So the
exactly.
challenges are all, and it's never something that that he doesn't think that you're capable of. So he wouldn't ask you to do it if he didn't think highly of, right?
Oh yeah,
It's a
100%.
weird way of showing it, but
He knows though. He knows who he
right,
can do that to, who he can't. He knows.
right. But another question. about playing for him. You're one of a few UConn players now that have had the opportunity to play for him, not only in college but on the USA
Yeah.
side. So I always wondered, I never got to go to well, actually, I went to London for the Olympics, but you guys are kind of separate from us when you're over there.
Yeah.
I always wondered the difference, like going back, years later, and now he's coaching a completely different group of, combination of not like all his own players, right?
Mhm.
Like what the differences are with the USA team as opposed to when you were playing for him at UConn.
Yeah, I mean, it is different. It is different. And I think for him, it's like you're now coaching adults versus, grooming young women. These are
Mm-hmm.
like adults, and we kind of you can't really sweat the small stuff with us. You guys kind of just let us do our thing. That didn't always work his first couple years with it. But I'll give Coach credit. Like after his first, so he had an 8-year stint, so to speak. And in the first couple years after those, he learned. And the one thing
Mm-hmm.
about your dad that I think he is great at is he does like adapt. He like rolls with it. He might fight it at first, but eventually he moves. And so he did that. And I think, you talked earlier about how me and Dee are really close to him. And I think getting to play for him later in our careers is really, because now we're like not on the same level. Not, I don't mean that, but we're not kids anymore, right? Like we can
Right.
have conversations that are adult conversations. And, he became more of like either like a cool uncle versus like your dad, you know what I mean?
Right.
Something like that. Or maybe like your older brother that, left for college when you were in middle school and now you're at like the same age and you get to hang out,
Right.
something like that. And we get to just talk basketball and like really actually have conversations about that. So that
Mm-hmm.
was really cool. But like I said, once he kind of figured out like, okay, I'm dealing with adults, then it was like one of the best experiences for USA basketball, I think.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's a different, because it's a different ball game with adults. It just is. It's not
Yeah.
bad or good. It's just different.
So I would say another like interesting thing that you've been able to do is like you played with Diana. Obviously, you played together in college, and then you guys go overseas. And I don't think a lot of people realize like the women's game overseas and kind of like what you guys put together and kind of how you and Diana kind of been together for what
Yeah,
12 years now or something
a
like
long
that.
time. Yeah,
Like
more.
you seem to always find each other.
Yeah.
So if you could talk about like how you guys end up kind of on the same team and kind of building this whole other career for yourselves that a lot of people in the States don't even realize is going on.
Yeah, I mean, so Dee's 2 years younger than I am. So I went overseas first. And I actually didn't go my first year. I went my second year, like as a pro or whatever. And then I was in Moscow. And I didn't have like an awful experience, but I was also like, okay, I'm done. Had enough.
Yeah.
That was great. I experienced it. Thank you for the cultural experience. Thanks for the rubles. I'm out. Like I don't want to go
Yeah.
back. But then Dee kind of got in the conversation, and make a long story short, it was like, all right, like if you go to this team, I'll go to this team. So we go back to this team. And from that point on, we played on this one team, Dynamo, but then the next year is when we joined Spartak. And that's really where we like started to kind of build like our European legacy. And we ended up winning 4 EuroLeague titles in a row. But from that first year until the end of I stopped going overseas first, we played together 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So 7 of my 10 seasons in Europe, I was with Dee. But yeah, it's crazy. Like to your point, a lot of people it's sad too. A lot of people don't get to hear the stories, see the games. I was just talking about this last night. There's some games, and there were some UConn players, but like this was the EuroLeague. It actually was the semifinals, but it really was the finals. So these were the rosters. So this is a game that nobody got to see. So it's me, Diana Taurasi, Lauren Jackson, Sylvia Fowles, the other Americans, Noelle Quinn, and Kelly Miller. Then like 3 of the Russian national Olympic team players. And then like a Latvian, there were some other European players, but I won't even try. I will murder their names. So I'm not even gonna. Then the other team is Penny Taylor, Cappy Pondexter, Tweety Nolan, Asia Jones, Svetlana Brasimova, and then Maria Stepanova, Sandrine Garuda, and then like a bunch of other Russian national team players. I can actually pronounce those ones. So these are like this is 2 typical Russian teams meeting. So it's like an all-star game, but you're actually teams and you're actually playing for something important.
Right.
And it's like, it's sad that these games never got, it's like the best games
Yeah.
never, it's like that 92 Dream Team practice, the best game no one
Yeah,
ever
I know.
saw. That's how I
Yeah,
feel
that,
about those rosters. And that's what Europe was. You had to like, it's like a college season. You kind of like, a lot of the other teams were easy. Then you'd get to the finals and you would meet like Goliath. And it was just, you had to somehow get past it.
yeah. I know that is crazy because like the fact that you guys kind of like you and D kind of were like almost like general managers of like you kind of put together your own little thing over there, right? Like it's crazy to think that you just kept going and going and going with everything between the Olympics and FIBA and all these things. It's like
Yeah.
everywhere the two of you guys went, it was. I mean, it probably helped that you guys were kind of just like like who wouldn't want to play with you two, right? So it's like
I do
it makes
pass a
sense.
lot. So.
Exactly. Well, yeah. So then D obviously wants to play with you, but so you kind of brought up before like how you're still playing. So you're in what year of your WM? I'm not gonna use numbers
Oh,
of age. What
no,
year
I
of your
don't care.
WNBA?
I'm proud. I'm 39. I don't know. So I like, I think it's like 17, 18 seasons. Since 2002. So
So
I'm like, I've had some injuries though, so it gets a little
yeah.
weird.
So what keeps you wanting to play? Is it just
I
love of the
think it's
game
like,
or what
honestly,
is
I
it?
think it's like, well, that obviously that's part of it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it. But it's also like I can physically do it. I think a lot of times when your body starts to break down, it's just really hard, right? Like you wake up in the morning, you take a couple steps, oof, they hurt. Then you have to go, to the gym an hour and a half early because you got to do treatment just to get yourself ready for practice, which is like, then you're like in and out of that, who knows? Then you got to stay another. All of a sudden, it becomes a major grind. I think a lot of older players can tell you a similar story, and it just, believe me, I've had my bumps. I just had a knee surgery like a year ago ish,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually finally feel. Yeah, it was like almost a year to the day,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually finally feel 100% from that. So this last year has been a little bit of grind, but for the most part, I haven't had that like old lady grind happen to me yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of that, I can still love the sport. It doesn't hurt. It's not hard. I don't feel, stressed by it. I can still just go play. And truth is, my Seattle Storm team got young a couple years ago, and they make me young. The way they are, the way they play, they're
Mm-hmm.
not like bogged down like some older players get either. They're just like fresh
Yeah.
and light all the time, and it makes me play that way. It makes me feel that way. So it
Yeah.
totally gave me like this like second life towards the end.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like when I think about like people always ask me like what's the best advice
Megan,
my dad
everyone's
ever.
telling you to be quiet.
I don't hear her at all.
People are like, tell Megan to stop doing stuff. Don't worry about it. I'm playing.
Uh, what's up, Megan?
Like to say, hi.
Oh yeah, people always ask me, like what the best advice my dad has given me. All this, people are curious sometimes. And I remember when I was in college and I transferred and then I got hurt, blah blah, and he was like, when you wake up and you don't have that feeling of like I just can't wait to go to like that there's like that energy running through you, like I can't wait to just go hoop. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
one day you're gonna wake up and it's just gone. He's like, don't try to fight it because you're not gonna be able to get it back. He's like, once it's gone, it's gone. And I was like, that's never gonna happen. I was like, I'm always gonna want. And then I woke up one day and I was like, I don't
I'm
want to do this anymore.
tired.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
still love basketball, but like I don't want to. Like you were saying, like I don't want to go
Right.
get treatment and go do all this stuff. Like, and it's like, so the fact that you still have that, I think, is
I
a
think I'm
testament to
lucky. I think
yeah,
part of it is
exactly.
I'm lucky. Some of it is just like, I don't know, like genetics or something, don't get me wrong. I take care of my body. I do what I need to do. I hired somebody a couple of years ago to help me do that, all that stuff.
Mhm.
But I think I'm also just lucky in that way because sometimes
Yeah,
things happen to people.
right. But it is crazy to think like,
Man, I can't believe you got tired of shooting threes. That
No,
happened?
see, I don't get. I never got tired of that. I never got tired of that. I'm still not
Okay.
tired of
My
that.
bad, my bad, my bad.
It was more like, what I'm saying,
Running.
like the stuff that went into it. Like I still love to just go like play basketball, but like once it started to feel like, like I'm not going to reach like what I dreamt of when I was like 8 years old. Like that's obviously out of the picture right now. Like I'm not going to be the next Jason Williams. That's
Right.
over.
Oh my God, I remember you being obsessed with him. Didn't you
I
have his
actually almost
jersey? Didn't you wear 55?
yeah, my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not
That's
just the jersey.
awesome.
I had the whole uniform in
Yeah, the
everything.
whole unit.
I almost texted you to say once we get into stories, you can't tell too many embarrassing stories.
I
One,
I
one in
already know which
particular
one you're
that
talking about. I promise I won't tell it.
you're the worst. But yeah, no, I mean, I guess another question I would have was like, was there a time through your whole process where you were like something clicked where it was like I'm on a trajectory or my mindset is like I'm going to get to this point like because not only do I feel like I'm capable of it, like I'm better than most, or because it was like I see that what the potential I have is, and like I'm going to work to the point of like that I can reach it.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to your dad, 100%. And he had just, so he was the assistant coach. I know you know this, but he was the assistant coach for the 2000 Olympic team. And he actually missed like our whole preseason. And for me, wait, 2000? Am I doing this right? Yeah. So we had just won the national championship. So we won it. Yes, 2000. So we had won it in like the spring of 2000. And then that summer, he went to be the
Yeah.
assistant. And he missed our whole preseason. And when he came, most of our preseason, and when he came back, he like, I remember this vividly. He like took a bunch of us to lunch, just kind of like, you know, getting back into it. And we were walking back to Gamble, and he kind of was like next to me, and he was like, you know, basically like, do you want to play on the Olympic team? And at that point, like I had had a really good sophomore year, you know, like obviously we won. I was, you know, I started, whatever. And I don't know, I was still only going to be a junior, and I wasn't really thinking, I'm just not that type. And
Mm-hmm.
sidebar, I also still have a voice in my head that's kind of like, not like you're not good enough, but kind of like you need to prove people wrong. It was more that. So I never really thought of myself in that elite category. Plus, we actually played the national team before they went to Sydney, and we got shellacked. I
I
was on
remember
like
that. I
a
was there.
college national team, and we got like, I mean, I don't even think I
I think I
scored.
remember that game.
I think I passed it through Lisa Leslie's legs once, though, so I'll take that. Moving on. So, anyways, he says, "Do you want to be on the Olympic team?" And I was just kind of like, "Yeah, sure," because like, what else are you gonna say? I was like, "Yeah."
Right.
And in that moment, he said, he was like, "I just spent, you know, X amount of time with them. If you want to be on this Olympic team, like, you have what it takes, but like,
Mm.
you need to make sure you're working towards that." And he said the same thing to me my senior year, not about the Olympics, but pulled me in his office right before my senior year. We were with Tanya, and he was basically asking me like, "Do you want to be National Player of the Year?" And I was like, "I don't know, you know, like whatever." And he was like, "You know, do you want to lead us in this? Do you want to lead us in that?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure," because what else are you gonna say? And
Mm.
he challenged me, and he was like, "Because if you want these things, you can have these things. Like they're there
Mm.
for the taking. You just have to want to do it." So he
Yeah.
definitely like pushed me in those directions. And I think as far as the Olympic goes, him saying that was the first time where it really put it on my radar. Like this could be real. It was kind of just like this dream, but
Mm.
then this was like, oh, this is real. Like I could really
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah. Because yeah, I'm always curious. Like people like you, yourself, and D. I'll ask about D in a minute. I always wonder like at what point in their lives did they realize like, whoa, like I'm different and I know it, and I could like really kick this thing up to the next level and like just continuously prove it, or shy away from it and like let it intimidate me, you know? Because I think you hear stories all the time about people with, you know, the most potential you could ever think of, and I think a lot of the reason people don't get to it is maybe they have the wrong people around them, or they have the wrong mindset, or
Mhm.
maybe a combination of both.
Yep.
So the fact that, you know, people like yourself and D are two great examples of like, so like you start to build this thing like, all right, now a lot's expected of you, and then you just kept building on it, and like expectations met and exceeded like over and over and over again. So whatever that drive is, or I always wonder if there's just a moment in time where you realize it, you know?
You
That's kind of what
realize?
I think. Yeah.
So it's tough. I think for me, it's like my personality is such where even if that moment came, I like wouldn't have seen it. But it's funny because long story short, my dad got asked like fairly recently, like, "Oh, when did you know, or like when did you think Sue was gonna be like an Olympian?" And if you know my dad, this is hilarious because he was
I was gonna
like,
say like a fifth grade soccer game, like
no. The funny thing is, he basically said somebody else when I was in like middle school, like some other guy, I forget, like some like a coach or something, said it to my dad, and my dad was like, "What? Are you serious?" That kind of thing, which is
mm,
hilarious because that's so my dad. which is probably why I have the personality I have. That's a whole other podcast or a whole other IG live. But yeah, so I think I had signs of it early, but then
Mhm.
simultaneously, like I told you, like just always feeling like I had to like prove something, or like I didn't do enough to deserve this, or I didn't do enough to deserve that. So that's what drove me. But I
Mhm.
think to the outside, it might have looked different. Like obviously your dad saw something in me or else he wouldn't have recruited me, so on and so forth. So I don't know. Sometimes it's different for everybody. For D, she probably knew when she was like, she'll probably tell you, she's like, I knew out of the womb. Came
Yeah.
out
I
shooting
mean,
threes.
yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, what I was going to ask about D, and similar to you. I mean, both of you, I have, I'm lucky enough to, you guys were both very good to me when I was just a little idiot running around at your practices. But we've all been,
I remember when you like crossed this like imaginary line of, okay, Mike, now you can actually get in practice, but you're the corner guy and you can only shoot
yeah,
threes.
just stand there and shoot
Because
threes.
so like how old are you in like 2002?
14.
14, yeah. So you're
Yeah.
14. Now you're like, you're starting to be, you're like probably in high school, whatever, whatever. And now it's like,
Mhm.
all right, you can come in practice. You couldn't really, you like played maybe once or twice, I don't know. But I remember being like the corner three guy when we had to have like shooters out there, when we had
Yeah.
like
Well,
guard
yeah.
teams. That was
When I think,
like
yeah,
you hit that when I was in school. So I got to see that.
yeah, at the end of yours is when like I finally was allowed to like kind of like shoot around with you guys,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
exactly.
then you left, and then when then I grew, and I kind of grew into myself. So when I was in high school, like I worked out with D all the time. You were gone by then, but me and D was like, because I just always like I saw like how my dad thought of her, and I was just like, and we would shoot, and I'd just be like, I need to do whatever she's doing, I'm trying to do, because
Yeah.
I can't beat her at anything, obviously. But yeah, you left like right before I actually like
Yeah.
really started like taking basketball
Yeah, man.
seriously,
Like on my recruiting trip, you were just like a little kid.
Yeah. I mean, when
You
you
were
got
just
there,
like
I
a
was
little boy.
9,
Yeah, you were like
like
little.
8 or 9, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So funny.
whenever I think about, speaking of like my dad seeing something in you,
Mhm.
whenever like names come up, like all you guys, there was only 2 times I ever remember him like coming home and being like legitimately like nervous about like home visits, or like who the
Yeah.
person like, and it's like it was you first, because he was like, Mike, you don't understand this. This girl's the best point guard I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, all right, well, great. Like, hopefully, are you gonna get her? Like,
Like go
he's
get
like,
her
yeah,
then.
I think we're gonna get her. Yeah. And then with D, it was like next to the next level. He's like,
Yeah,
Mike,
no,
you
I
don't
remember
understand.
that
Like,
too.
this girl's gonna be the best basketball player ever.
Hmm.
And I was like, and then and with D, like she walks into the room and it's just, even if you haven't, people that haven't met her, you can't explain it. It's like,
Yeah.
I think about like with Caitlin, the first time they met, like Caitlin's like, oh, like, how are you? Nice to meet you. And it's like hug, kiss you all over the face. Like, it's like she's known you your whole life.
I
And
know.
it's like,
It makes you feel like a million
Caitlin even walked
bucks.
away. She was like, I've never seen someone just like, the energy is just, she was like, I feel like I've known
No,
her
it's
forever. And
charisma. She
I
like
was like, that's
oozes
deep.
confidence,
Yeah.
charisma, and like whether she
Oh,
knows
there's,
you for 5 seconds.
she
Oh, this
she
idiot's
just
on
goes to
here.
tell me what,
Cut it, cut it, cut it.
respond to my DN, D. I tried to ask you.
Nah, she will not respond to nothing.
No, nothing. But no, yeah. I
Last
mean, the
minute. She'll
two of
get back to
you,
you last
we,
minute.
we were talking. You talk about impact and like um, what impacts people have had on you, and you guys are two people that like inspired me to want to get better at basketball. Just watching you guys play, and it's maybe I had a bunch of people throughout my life be like, when the argument like women's basketball, men's basketball would always come up,
Hmm.
I would always be like, basketball is basketball. Like the
Yeah,
chess pieces might look different, but the talent and the commitment and the drive and all those things, that doesn't have like a man or woman quality. That's just that's a mentality. So you and D were the beginning of me being like, wow, I would love to be that good at something, which I am. Obviously that didn't work out. But so one thing I wanted to bring up that I don't know how many people know about it, but you recently took a job with the front office of the Denver
hmm,
Nuggets.
yeah.
And kind of what inspired that, and like is this kind of like planning for your future after your playing career, and what mark do you want to leave in terms of like kind of what I asked you before, your impact, like how you plan on giving back to the game, because I can't imagine you're just going to disappear.
Nah, yeah. Come on, you know better than that.
Right.
Yeah. So the Denver thing was like totally random.
Mm,
Basically, like friend of a friend type thing, connected the president there, Tim Connolly, gave him my phone number, and he was just like, "Hey, can we chat?" And the short of it is, obviously, only playing in the WNBA and not playing in Europe anymore. What that did was open up like a lot of months, like 6 months
yeah.
for me to
Right.
try all kinds of stuff. So what ended up, yeah, so that's basically what ended up happening was he kind of called and was just like, hey, and I was like, I'm still playing, that's my priority. And he was like, cool, come check it out anyway. And I did. And truth be told, I went there with zero expectations. It was almost like a recruiting trip, you
Mm,
know, and we were just going to see if we fit. And they were like so cool. And I just liked the vibe there and how they did things. It was like they had a job, a very important job, because in the NBA, everything's so competitive, especially like front office coaches. It's like there's a pressure there. They have to
mm,
perform, you could easily get fired. So they're obviously there to do their jobs, but simultaneously at Denver, like they had a lightness about them. They could still go to dinner and like kick it and not be like stressed out. They didn't keep you in the
mm,
office, 24 hours. So I really enjoyed it. And I was like, all right, like I will never get an opportunity like this to basically like pull the curtain back in this like official sense, but I
mm,
still could have basketball be my priority. So it was an opportunity I couldn't say no to. And that's kind of
yeah.
what happened. And I just got to, again, pull that curtain back, see everything. They let me see, do whatever I wanted, be involved in whatever I wanted. And I just got to learn. And now I have that in my back pocket. And I know kind of like what it feels like. So down
Mm,
the road, I can kind of like assess my opportunities.
yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And so like what's an example, like what exactly do you like, how involved are you with the organization, and do you feel like they um obviously they value who you are and what you know, your approach and everything, but do you feel like involved or in terms of like, I don't know, like where do you fit in, and like
Oh,
what are
so
your,
right now, so technically right now, I'm like I'm
like a
jobless.
lead?
I'm a free
Okay.
agent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So because we did that college tour where we ended up like playing UConn, playing all these teams, that was just too much of my time. And to
Okay.
me, obviously, who could have planned for a freaking pandemic? But to me, that was like going to be a huge year for me because it was like the year. First of all, I had that knee surgery, and then it was that
Mm,
year leading into the Olympics. So we like put together this whole tour, and I wanted to be all in on that. And there was just at that point like no space, literally from like a time perspective. So I didn't cut ties with them per se, but I'm not like with them in an official sense. So that was just a 1 year thing.
okay. So yeah, I didn't know. That's why I was curious, because I remember
Yeah.
seeing the announcement and all that stuff, and I just didn't know kind of the specifics of it. But so yeah, I guess moving on to, what do you think do you have like, do you want to
Am I doing,
coach
what am I
when
going
you're
to
done?
do when I grow up? That's why I don't want to stop. Then you got to grow up.
Right,
You
exactly.
know, I don't know. There's like a lot of things are starting to show. I will say, as I've gotten older, and like I said, don't play overseas. You have tons of time to try stuff out. A lot of things have started to show themselves. The one thing about, so there's things about coaching that interest me, which I never thought I would say. If you asked me this 5 years ago, I'd have been like, nope. There's things about it that interest me. There's an interest there. Same with the front office. It would be hard. I do want to say, like, people ask this, so I'm just going to kind of make my own question. But if I did do anything with the NBA, I would still have to have a connection to the WNBA. I can't, I
Mm,
don't think I can ever, that I want that league to succeed. God, I spent all this time in it. Like, I don't want it
right,
to, so I want to continue to help that. So I doubt I will never walk away from the WNBA completely.
right.
With that, I've
Yeah,
been
and
doing some broadcasting. So there's that happening now. I mean, listen, we have the number one rated IG live show, according to nobody. So maybe that's in my future. No, just like, so we'll see.
yeah, I mean, obviously right now you're focused on still playing and whatnot, but it's always interesting to just hear like what, because eventually you have to make that decision, right? But I think I mean, not to
I
toot
am
your
in a
horn
weird
too much,
gray
but
area. I'll tell you that. I'm
yeah,
like, I'm growing up, but I'm not, but I am, but I'm not. I'm playing, but I'm still doing it. It's definitely a
yeah,
weird gray area, but things are starting to show themselves.
yeah. One thing somebody commented. I mean, there's a million of them in here, but speaking of the NBA, obviously, you're on the female side, but somebody asked, growing up or even now, just like your favorite players or players that you feel like inspired you to be better, whatever it is. It could be past, present, whatever. A lot of people have been asking that.
Yeah. Well, I always start off with, growing up, I was a Knicks fan. So my favorite guy was Kenny Skywalker, which has zero to do with my game. No translation there whatsoever. But it was actually, so it's two people. First is actually Jen Azey. And remember I was telling you earlier, it was kind of like your dad kind of planted the seed of like me being an Olympian. She actually
Hmm.
was a part of that. My dad sat me down. They won when she was at Stanford in like the early 90s, like 90, 91. And someone did some documentary. And my dad like was like, hey, there's this documentary on. And we watch it. And it's literally like now we always talk about like, if you see it, you can be it, which is why it's so important to have all different types of people and like representation. For me back then, that was the see it, be it moment. Because now you fast forward a couple years, she's on that 95, 96 Olympic team.
Wow.
And we get mistaken for each other all the time. We look alike, dark hair, like white girl, kind of the same build, same size. I mean, she's way more jacked than I am, but same build, same size. And
Hmm.
that was like who I wanted. I was like, she can be on the Olympic team? Like, okay, like I could. And then your dad like kicked that up a notch by like, you know, basically challenging me if I want to be on an
Yeah.
Olympic team. So it was that
Right.
combination. So it wasn't that I modeled my game after her, but it was more like, oh, this is somebody who's doing it. And then you fast forward, well, not fast forward, actually, it's before this, but my favorite all time player is Mike Bibby, like hands down. Like, fell in love with him when he was at Arizona, followed him his whole career, had his poster in my room in college, along with Eminem, of course. And yeah, number 10, that whole thing.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, they traded Jason Williams for him, so I was a little salty about that. Um,
You probably were
yeah.
devastated. Where did Jason Williams go after that? Like
They
Memphis,
traded him to, well, then Vancouver had just
Vancouver,
moved
and
to Memphis,
Memphis.
so he's Memphis, and then of course now the Kings go to like three straight. They had all those battles with the Lakers.
I know. Those were epic.
So
Those were
yeah, I
epic.
mean,
Yeah,
I
Brad, Team
still, I mean,
Dime. Yo, recently
so,
I was actually talking to Mike recently, and 'cause something got posted where I said basically the same thing I said. He was my favorite player and whatnot.
yeah.
And I was like, he hit me up like, "Hey, what's up?" I was like, "Am I on Team Dime yet?" Team Dime's like his crew. I was like, "Am I on Team Dime yet?" He's like, "Yeah, man, Team Dime forever." I was like, "There it is.
Well,
I
did you
can
see that?
retire. Team Dime."
So him and Jay Will were the backcourt for one of they played on the same team in that TBT tournament last year, or
Oh,
yeah, last year.
or-
So they were the
they played in
backcourt. That was cool.
TBT. Oh my God, I didn't know that.
It
Or
was
was it
either
the Big
last
Three?
year, huh? No, no, I thought it was TBT, wasn't it?
I have no idea.
Yeah, whatever it was. No, it was TBT because it was Jason Williams was like the kind of like the captain or whatever, like the
Okay,
one that put the whole thing together.
okay.
Um,
TBT.
yeah, well, obviously they're not having it this year, but yeah, Mike Bibby, he's huge now, by the way,
I know.
like
He's
jacked. Like,
yoked. I know.
what? I saw a picture of him and I was like, whoa,
I know. He's
where
huge.
did that come
He
from?
coaches.
Yeah. Um, obviously you're a huge Knicks fan, being from New York, and I know if
Yeah.
anyone follows you on any social media, they'll see
I'm getting
that you've been.
crushed right now, Mike.
I was gonna say that.
I'm getting
What?
crushed right now. Because on the Last Dance last night, episode whatever, they showed like I did a Bulls memory, and my memory is the famous John Starks dunk. And I'm just like kind of chat because so the memory is like he dunked. We were up 2-0 in that series, 1993
Yeah, yeah.
Eastern Conference
That
Final.
was this episode. Yeah, that was the
Yeah,
episode last night. Yeah.
and then the Bulls like smashed us the next 4 games. And I was saying how like even then I knew you probably shouldn't dunk on Michael like that. Everybody's been crushing me like that's not getting dunked on. This is what's getting dunked on. Just
I mean, he's in the
mansplaining to
picture,
me.
but it wasn't like directly on him.
Listen,
But
as a Knick fan, that's what happened. That's what happened.
yeah, no. I
I
mean,
see the points. Let me
then what
have this.
happened?
Let me have this one thing. We have
Yeah, 'cause-
nothing. Let us
yeah.
have this one thing.
I
Yo,
know. It's
crush.
like,
It's actually funny. People go hard. It's been a fun day.
how have you been? What do you think of the documentary?
Oh, it's been great. I
I know.
mean,
It's like,
I lived it, and yet there's so much I didn't remember. Some of it's because I was a kid, but there's so much I didn't remember. I didn't remember all the drama. Speaking of that series, I had no recollection of him like going to Atlantic City for the night. I don't remember that at all. I just remember the series. I didn't remember Phil not getting re-signed for the 1998 season. Like
yeah,
Krause basically saying you're out no matter what. Didn't remember that. So it's been great to kind of, I mean, listen, it's Michael Jordan, like greatest of all time. And it's been great to see him speak about it and talk about it and share with us. And he was worried about people thinking he's horrible. I'm like, if you haven't had a fight with a teammate in practice, You
Right.
haven't played basketball. If you hadn't had to go to your coach and be like, yo, get this guy out of the game, you haven't
Yeah.
played. If you had to go to a teammate and be like, you probably don't want to give it to her right now, like, and by the way, you shouldn't be shooting now that we're on the
Yeah.
topic. If you haven't done
Right.
that, like, you haven't played. So that's
Right.
like, that's a part of it. People are freaking out. I'm like, that's a part of it.
I don't think he's. Yeah. I saw that he said that before it came out too, and I was like, now that I'm watching, I'm like,
Yeah.
if anything, I like him more.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely
but
humanizes him because we didn't get to
I
know him
def
when he was a player. No social media. He was
right.
kind of close to vest. So it's
I know.
cool.
Imagine it kind of makes you feel, um, feel for guys like LeBron and stuff. What these guys
Yeah.
deal with now with social media, like if all that stuff was around with Jordan and all that stuff, like with the Atlantic City thing. I
Wild.
mean, I was like 5 years old, so I definitely don't remember it.
The
But
one
look when
scene, the one scene that got me was him laying on that like couch in a hotel room, smoking the cigar and just being like, "Oh, I had peace and quiet until you guys came in here," and essentially saying like, once he goes outside those doors, it's just like mayhem. And this was the only moment he ever had in his life was when he was like, I'm sure in his own home, obviously, but just like when it's just him in his hotel room on the road, it's the only time he can be. It's just like, dang, that's so lonely. Here's
yeah,
Michael Jordan, but he's like probably so lonely in those moments. That really hit. That really hit.
yeah, it's crazy to watch like how he just did whatever he wanted. Like they show the one clip of when they won the whatever it was first or second round, and then they had a bunch of days off, and he was just like, "Yeah, I'm going to play golf for like 5 days."
Hmm.
Told Phil we're not having practice. He's just like smoking cigars, just like doing
I know the
whatever he wants.
cigar
It's just
intake
like
is crazy.
it's like
I'm
no,
like,
I
dang, that's
tell
a lot.
you. He's like, I told Phil we're not having practice, so it's like everybody can go chill. He's like, we need this time off. Meanwhile, it's just him saying like, no, I need this time off. Like, get me
Yeah,
away from
probably.
from all this stuff. Yeah, I can't imagine it. I mean, people like you obviously dealt with like media, whatever you want to call it, scrutiny or attention, but to be
No,
someone like to see like that on that level, like I can't imagine. There's got to be
no,
times, like you said, you just want to go hide and just like be alone or something.
totally.
Um,
And I do think like what he lived through and what we're seeing now, all these athletes nowadays, they probably got to learn from that, and probably like
for sure.
operate in a certain way because Michael got, shit for doing this and crap for doing that and whatnot. And so like LeBron and these guys, Kobe got to learn from that, both on and off the court.
Yeah, I guess maybe I was so young that I didn't realize. Like, I always thought that throughout Jordan's career, like, I always thought everybody just like loved him. He was like invincible. And now you
No.
see this. Like, I never knew about all the controversy and all this
Yeah.
stuff. Like, it's pretty cool to see. Just like, and then they show all the stuff like the impact he had with like when they went to where I think they were in China or Japan or whatever, and they couldn't even like he couldn't even like walk around the streets. Like everybody was just going crazy.
Yeah.
Because like you said, there was no social media. Like, how do we know about that? Even if we
Right.
were old enough to pay attention to it, it's just crazy to watch. It's pretty cool. Um, they don't. There's no way they're gonna tell like all the stories,
Well, he has final
but
say, so of course.
yeah,
But I feel like
exactly.
there's still so much to go. Like what that was six. So there's four more. His dad
Yeah,
still
four more.
hasn't passed away, like in the storyline.
Mhm.
He hasn't retired the first time. He hasn't retired the second time. Like
Right.
there's still all the gambling rumors as maybe that's why he had to retire. There's so much we
Yeah.
still haven't gotten to.
But yeah, that's next week, right? Because that's how this one ended. Was they're going to
Yeah,
he's about to retire or
yeah.
the whole game.
But
Yeah, that whole
since
thing.
you got your boy or my boy, I should say, on the back wall. I mean, the music in this doc has been
I
unbelievable.
just said that last night. Like,
I'm like every time
might be the
I'm just
best one.
like they're just like killing it on this soundtrack.
Right. I know. I
Oh,
said that
so good.
in the first episode. I think it was the game when he had like 60 something against Larry Bird,
Yeah.
and what is that? It's that LL Cool J song.
Telecuja,
But
yeah, I'm bad or
yeah,
yeah,
that one. I was
yeah.
like, wow, this is killing it
Perfect.
because it kind of like let off with that, and I was like, damn. And then yeah, they've been like even Nas was on it
I know,
last night.
I know, I know.
So they've been playing yeah, like all that stuff that I know you like. I was actually gonna try to surprise you, but I couldn't figure out how to do it when you came on. I was gonna put Informer on for you. That's our jam.
Informer. I'm not Return to the Mac.
Or that, either one. I mean, I feel
That's
like that
lit.
week,
The
that
ultimate party
weekend, that
starter.
I feel like that weekend, that was Tampa, right? Well, those are the only two
Yes,
songs we
that was
listened to
Tampa.
just
I swear to
on
God, every
repeat.
time it comes on and I'm somewhere, I'm like
Same,
voice noting you that every time.
every time.
Oh, the
We did have
ultimate
that
voice
run, yeah, that
note.
summer when it was like we were just constantly going back and forth, just texting each other every time we listened to it. We got to get back to that.
I'm like, I haven't been out of my house. I don't even
Me
mean
either.
because of this. I actually don't even mean because it's like I haven't gone out in a while.
No, I mean, the only thing open here is golf courses. And the weather hasn't been great, so I've played golf a few times. Other than that,
Yeah.
oh, there are your boys, TJ and Nico are commenting Tampa.
Tampa.
Tampa summer.
That's so funny.
That's yeah. We called you summer the whole weekend. That was
Yeah,
funny.
summer. Good times.
One thing. Somebody asked if we would play was like start cut bench, start bench cut.
Okay.
So you got to pick. Yeah,
Hit me.
I mean, I guess it's pretty. This is impossible. Diana, Maya, Stewie.
Oh God. Start,
Like
bench,
that's
cut.
impossible.
I mean, this is just like, oh, in a situation like this, sadly, someone has to get benched. I don't want to do it. I mean, cut. I don't want to do it. I'm gonna have to just like go off my like little bias, which is, D's gonna start, Stewie's gonna get benched, and Maya's gonna get cut. Not because I want to do it. Not
Right.
because I want to do it.
That's why I read it and I was like, that's impossible.
It's almost too easy. It just kind of gets laid out for me.
Yeah. What what's that game that you guys play on yours? Like rapid fire questions?
Yeah, rapid fire.
I couldn't think of like I was trying to write stuff down like to ask you like we could play that and I was just like I don't even know.
You got to prepare.
Well, I tried like questions like that. Like, what am I gonna do? I ask you to pick between like, it's like those are impossible questions.
Yeah.
I think we would do. It would be better if we talked about like non-basketballs. Like you just brought up like music and because like
Biggie or
I feel like
Tupac.
usually me and you that's like what we talk about like movie like we're like quoting movies and stuff like that. Like people, what was the name of the screen name that you had in college with the quotes?
Oh, Bev Francis.
Yeah. I still think about that to this day because I would go on in like your guys' study lounge
Yeah.
and you would every
I have a
day. So tell
photo.
people what it was. Tell people
All
what it
right.
was.
So
'Cause they have
in
no idea what it
college, AOL AIM was like huge. I
was.
still rock an AOL email address, just for the record. They don't do the AIM anymore. But anyway, so I made a screen name. It was called Bev Francis, and it was that's the name of like she's actually like a bodybuilder, and she had a gym in Syosset. And that's why I was like, what name's what name? I was like, Bev Francis. So Bev Francis was the handle, and every day I would put a movie quote. And like I would leave it as the away message, sorry. So the away message would be a movie quote, and then I'd come back and I would check who got it and I would like keep a tally and I would like post the score. Then the next day I'd have a new quote, and then I'd have the answer from the day before. And I did this I think I did it for like either like a whole semester or maybe a whole year. It got a little hard, I got to admit. It's hard to like find these like random
yeah, because every
quotes.
day, like I would, you remember, like I'd be at practice every day, and I would have to like do my homework or whatever,
Yeah.
and go into your guys' like lounge,
Yeah.
and I would go on the computer, and I would see it, and sometimes I was old enough where I'd seen enough movies, but then you got to the point where they were just so obscure and like
because literally the longer I did it, obviously like I ran out of stuff. I was like running out of ammo. Even for me, I would have to like look stuff up to be like what kind of and by the way, you couldn't. This is all coming back now, Mike. I couldn't pick like some obvious quote,
right,
because people could just Google it. People would just be like, I don't know, like say hello to my little friend. I mean, you know that one, but like you could just easily Google that. So I would have to.
Then it would be like they'd ask Jeeves.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, no asking Jeeves. Although Diana, you should when Dee comes on, you should ask her about that. Be like, what did you use before Google, and see how she pronounces it. It's hilarious. You have to ask her.
Hold on. I got like 30 seconds left. I got to tap you back in.
Okay.
I got to like restart.
All right.